All right, good morning. We're the Cola Guys. I'm David.
I'm George.
And this morning we are joined by our friend Rachel Debacker. She's with Gallup Design Build. She is an architect, and she is here with us this morning to talk about the process of designing your home all the way to the completion process of having it built and moving into it. So welcome, Rachel. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much.
The Cola Guys isn't your average real estate podcast.
Our mission is to give buyers and sellers the power of knowledge through their real estate transactions.
We do this by helping first-time homebuyers realize that there are more expenses that come with owning a home than just the loan.
We also understand there are many times move-up buyers and sellers have forgotten the process because it's been so long since their last real estate transaction.
We make the downsizing easy.
Once you get into the habit of working with us, the process becomes so smooth you won't mind to move.
We are also excited to share with you what all the Midlands has to offer.
To get started, give us a little bit of background info about what made you end up in the Columbia area and then what also made you get into architecture.
Okay, I'll start with the first question. I moved here with my family in 2016. My husband has had a few job changes in his career, and we moved because of his job. He teaches at USC. So we moved here from Tennessee. I am originally from Georgia, and I've lived in now Georgia, Virginia, Texas, Tennessee, and South Carolina. So I've kind of made my way around the Southeast and have loved every place for different reasons. But I grew up in Georgia, lived there all my life until I moved to Virginia when I was 18 to go to college. And then worked in Georgia for a little while afterwards. And then decided, wow, commuting is hard in Atlanta, and maybe it's time to go to grad school. And my husband, who was a boyfriend at the time, we both decided to move to Austin to go to UT Austin. He did a PhD program there, and I lived there for a year before I applied to the master's program so that I could get in-state tuition. So we lived there for 5 years, and so I both worked, went to school, and then worked again in Austin while he was doing this 5-year PhD program, which we refer to as our glory days of living in Austin in our 20s, which is a great time to live in a city like that. And then from there, we've moved around for usually based on his work. But we're here in South Carolina, and we've now been here the longest. So, could be sticking.
Yes, man.
So maybe your blood's starting to run garnet and black a little bit?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure?
Yeah,
Very
we
good.
have no problem with that.
Awesome. So what drew you into architecture? Kind of like how old were you when you started feeling this bug to want to design structures?
I always loved looking at, kind of home magazines that came into our house. And then between the time that I was 15 and 16, my mom actually picked out a plan with Southern Living, and we went and visited the house that was built in another spot in Georgia. She and my sister and I decided this was the house that we were going to build. So my mom hired a contractor, and we already had land that she and my dad had built or had bought way earlier in my childhood. So I went through the process of, seeing the house built, and kind of studying the plans, and really kind of started thinking like, oh, maybe this is something I'd like to do. And I think that time in your life when you're 14, 15, 16 years old is kind of a critical period where you get really into things. You get, you start really paying attention. So I do think that had a big impact on me. I started figuring out, okay, what does this mean to apply to architecture school, go to architecture school? I ended up at University of Virginia, which felt like a huge goal that was achieved, and had a great time in Charlottesville for 4 years. Architecture school was difficult, very little. I didn't do much college partying, had a lot of time in studio, but studio has its own fun. So University of Virginia. Then I worked for a while in Atlanta. That was actually I graduated in 2002, which is post 9/11.
Yep.
And I'm sure you don't remember because you may not have been alive, George, but at that time, that so many companies had hiring freezes.
Yeah.
And so places that were all ready to hire the year before, companies were like, no, we might have a part-time job for you. We might have a internship position, but we don't have anything full-time. So I worked a few architecture positions in like kind of short-term capacities in Atlanta, and it just seemed like a good time. I knew in order to get a professional architecture license, I had to have a master's degree with the programs that I had done. It's a little bit different now, but at that time, that was what was required. So I started looking at master's programs. My husband and I, boyfriend at the time, decided we would love to live in Austin, and UT Austin has an excellent grad school program. So we just kind of made it my mission to figure out how to get in there.
Awesome.
So yeah, and then we've moved around since then. And I was telling David earlier, I worked a little bit in residential in Austin before I entered grad school. And then after that was a long period of mostly being in commercial architecture in a bunch of different capacities, because I've worked in different cities and, have just found different firms to work for. But here in South Carolina, I've maybe done some more, because we did some renovation projects on our own house, kind of got to know some of the construction community, and had the opportunity to jump over to Gallup Design Build early last year. And so I made that transition, and so now I'm designing people's dream houses, and it's been a wonderful shift. So
now that you've shifted from the commercial side back to residential, when people first come to you, what's your expectation of not only getting to know them, but what do you expect them to bring? Or do they need to come with you an idea for what they already want, or are you able to kind of help them?
both, yes, all that.
Yes.
So we usually, when folks seek out Gallup Design Build, they generally will have a property, land, or a plot in a subdivision, and they have either very specific ideas of what they can build and how they want to use that plot, or they may even come to us with a general layout that they have that they want to make work for their family. We have a good client onboarding system that we've implemented where we have a questionnaire that they fill out, and we try to get very specific about who's going to live here, how often do you entertain, all sorts of things. You know, do you have pets? So you had your pet, Rosie's pet sitter episode. Listen to that one. I mean, we try to ask. I like to know, how do you want to feel in your home? How do you want guests to feel in your home? You know, do you have specific hobbies that you need your house to, you know, be account for, whether it's cooking or water skiing or, you know, whatever it is. And then I like to ask, what are you willing to compromise on? And sometimes people leave that blank, which is, it makes me think they haven't really thought about the fact that, you know, compromises will be made. And so whether it's square footage or every room doesn't have a walk-in closet, you know, we'd like to have a 3-car garage, but it actually makes more sense to have 2 based on our lot.
Yeah.
You know, and the other things that you want. So it's kind of thinking a little bit critically of like, what are you willing to, what are the deal breakers, and what is, if you couldn't have, would not make this project worth it? And what are the things that you could say, like, I don't have to have a standing seam metal roof if it means that I can also have my sauna room.
Sure.
Or, you know, trade-offs. What are the trade-offs, I guess?
Yeah. George and I can empathize with the whole not compromising thing sometimes with clients as we're taking them through houses. So yeah, we get that. So you've moved back into the residential piece, and you've got this wonderful, it sounds like a great client onboarding process. who is the right person to build a house? Because I mean, I think sure you start with people who have the expectation of like, oh, we want to design our own house. We don't like anything else we've seen, but maybe they just don't have kind of the right mindset for it because it probably takes longer to build a house. So, you know, kind of walk us through like, you know, how should people prepare themselves for starting this process, and then kind of how long does it take and what does it look like?
I mean, I always tell people being decisive helps tremendously. Know, you know, as Shakespeare said, know thyself, know what it is that you want to focus on, because what I might want to focus on with their specific piece of property, whether it's their views to the lake or, I don't know, just a strange plot layout, you know, these things that can actually help us come up with a really interesting design because of the features. But if, you know, you actually want a whole lot of privacy and not a whole lot of glass, you know, kind of know that. So knowing your focus, but also knowing that this is going to be, I mean, it's literally thousands of decisions that are made, whether the homeowner or client is making them or whether they say, well, we have an in-house interior designer. I think we also will, if someone has a specific person they want to work with, but whether it's trusting other consultants to help you make these decisions and get through that process, but it is thousands of decisions will be made from the materials, all A to Z. And so whether you're trusting the architect, interior designer, contractor to make these decisions, or whether you want to be very involved, it's good to kind of know that is coming at you.
Yeah.
And it is a long process. And so, you know, knowing if you're going to want to be very involved in picking the windows or the doors, or that's something that you never paid attention to, so it's not critical to you. Yeah, and it can be. I know people ask us that all the time. How long does it take? And I hate to say it depends, but it depends because we've got some really large houses. We've got houses that are with a lake level, a main level, and a second level, and then also a 1-car garage and a 2-car garage, and it's kind of a whole, you know, that's a large project. So it not only takes a while to get through the number of decisions that have to be made for that end goal, but then just the process of building that takes a while. So, but usually folks that are building something so large kind of understand this is a long process.
Sure.
There are some things that are pretty simple, and people are very clear with what they want, and that is a much quicker process. That's like, I don't know, 8 weeks or less. Well, you know, from start to finish, bam. And then whether or not somebody is financing through a bank, that's kind of a 4 to 6 week. You probably know better than me, but a 4 to 6 week period where we're just kind of making sure the financing is in order. But if someone has, if they're not using a bank for a mortgage or a construction loan, then it's a different.
Yeah.
It can be quicker. So.
But the process itself, once you start working with a potential builder client, at what point are you the one who puts them into contact with the builder, or?
So with our company, because it's all in-house, I'm immediately working with the builder, with a person, you know, the contractor who will be, you know, tearing up the ground and laying the concrete and starting the framing. So we are in close talks from the outset. Clients, I think that is one really nice thing about a design build approach is the budget is always in mind, and we give people checks along the way in design to give them just like a reality check of like, hey, we're running, I don't know, it's more than $200 a square foot. So from what we're seeing, based on the features that you have and the size of, you know, the project, is that good with you? Because that is, X amount in the end. And they have, because I'm directly with the contractor, we have very real-time pricing. We know exactly how much it costs us to frame a house of a similar size that we just framed last month. And a framing package can be $80, $90, $120,000. So, that's a big outlay.
Sure.
I'm now lost train of your question,
It's
but
okay. Just you kind of
but
answered it how the
basically,
builder's involved with y'all right
yes,
away.
Yes, and that would be a different process if you went to an architecture firm who specializes in residential architecture. You might design a whole house and then take it to get bids from 3 different contractors, and unless you have construction services added with your architecture firm to help guide you through that construction process, you'll have to go through 3 different bids, figure out, are we comparing apples to apples? Yeah. Is this really competitive pricing? So I would say you have to be, I would say, a way more knowledgeable client to do it that way.
Sure. So what are some of the common things you see people want in a custom design home that, are things that sometimes you have to go back to them with that C word, compromise, right?
Well, okay, so I'm not even a high majority, but many of our clients are empty nesters. So folks that are nearing retirement, or retirement is on the horizon, within the next 10 years horizon, and they've maybe also taken care of their elderly parents. So often they are adamant about, I want my house to be all on one level, very few steps, and I want it to be, wide hallways to accommodate. If I need a wheelchair, we want 3-foot doors. And then sometimes that meshes really well with their site.
Yeah.
Their site might really ask for a one-level house that maybe they have stairs up to an attic level that either they or their grandkids can access the Christmas decorations. Yeah. Sometimes folks want all of the worlds. They want the lake level access, which comes with stairs, and very little stairs, and also plenty of space, also the room over the garage, and also the ADA widths. And sometimes what we can do, if budget allows, we build in a giant closet that will one day become an elevator. Okay. And we've done that on a number of projects, saying if in fact you aren't able to access the stairs at some later date, an elevator can come into place. So sometimes people will plan for that stuff. What are some other common things? That was your question, right? Common things that people ask for. There's that. I'm winding down. I'll just say quickly, a pet peeve is young folks expecting their custom home build to be their forever home, which I don't know how realistic that is. It's a great and lofty, noble goal, but I don't know how much reality is in it.
Tune back next week as we dive deeper into architecture.